Hello, welcome back. 2024 is almost over, and I read a lot of books this year, and I want to talk about them. This is going to be a more uncut video. I think I'm just going to talk a little bit, and I'll try to keep it not too long. I'll try to keep it rather short, because I read a lot of books, and I'm really happy about that, and I'm actually really proud of myself, because it wasn't anything that I had kind of on mind, but I just really found joy in reading again. I felt like a little kid, like I really enjoyed reading and exploring different books and topics and stories, and I'm happy to share about it today. Before we start, if you want to, you can let me know what you read this year and what you can recommend, what you enjoyed, or what you didn't enjoy. Yeah. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm just going to go, I think, more in chronological order. I'm also a little bit sick, so excuse the voice. And I have a nettle tea to go with this long talking video. It's nice and cozy. And yeah, let's get started. So, the first book I read this year was The Bastard of Istanbul from Elif Shafak, which this book holds a very dear space in my heart because it was the first book that got me like really back into reading. I just kind of stumbled upon it in a book box where you give out the books for free, and it spoke to me, so I picked it up and read it and really enjoyed it. And Elif Shafak has now become one of my favorite authors. I would say she was like my favorite author this year for sure. She just writes really beautifully and is really well with her words, and the way she intertwines different stories together is really nice. So this book is about a girl who grew up with her mom in America, but her family lives in Istanbul in Turkey, and she goes there to kind of discover and learn about her family's history, and yeah, that's kind of what the book is about. There's more to it, and it's from different perspectives, which is quite nice. And it also talks about the Armenian genocide, so that's very interesting and has kind of a historical aspect to it, which I personally didn't really know much about before. So yeah, I can definitely recommend this book. I really enjoyed that. And then after that, I read a couple books that Mona had here, because I didn't really have a lot of books, or like books that I necessarily wanted to read. I was just kind of reading what there was around then for a while. I read this is Alle Farben Grau from Martin Schäuble. It's a German book. There will be a few German books here as well. Yeah, it was a good book. It's about a teenager who is depressive and suicidal. I'm not going to spoiler what happens in the end, but it is about mental illness and yeah, about his time in like a psych ward, and it's a really emotional, sad book. Very heavy. There's a few heavy books here. I like heavy books, like topic-wise. And yeah, it was really good. I read this in a couple days. It was like a nice, easy read in a sense that it read really well. The topic wasn't easy, but yeah. Then I read this. Is from Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly. It's called Du musst nicht von allen gemocht werden, vermut sich nicht zu verbiegen. So you don't have to be liked by everyone to have the courage to not change yourself, bend over backwards for people. And this follows a dialogue of a young guy and a philosopher, and they kind of exchange about life philosophies and finding your own path, doing what you want to. It was a good book. And it follows like the psychology of Alfred Adler, if that might give you an idea. But yeah, I liked this book. I like the messages that were in there, but I have to say, sometimes when I read like philosophical books, I feel like they're kind of like know-it-all. I have the wisdom to the world, without meaning this in a bad way, like they, you know, have really good points. Maybe you understand what I mean, and that kind of bothers me a little bit sometimes, but yeah, nonetheless, it was still a good, easy read. Also, I feel like if you want to kind of get into philosophy, this is a really good start because it's a dialogue and it's easy language that is like very understandable and very straightforward, and not like big long texts that you kind of have to decipher and really study. Yeah, so much to those two books. Let's see, what did I read next? I think after that I read another book that I just had here at home that I had gotten for my birthday the year before. It's from Clemens G. Ave, Der biophilia effekt, Heilung aus dem Wald. It's another German book, which means like the healing of the forest. And this is written by a scientist who is studying about environment and how the environment affects our beings and well-being and health. And yeah, I really like this book. I agree completely with what he says, that nature is super important for us and our health, and it also had a lot of ways to integrate that in your daily life and different aspects, different kinds of therapies and stuff. Very interesting, also easy read. Can recommend if you're interested in topics like that. Then I started ordering books and buying books and looking into what I actually wanted to read. I started watching like book reviews on YouTube and getting some more inspiration. I now have a very, very long reading list as well. But then I ordered another one from Elif Shafak because I really enjoyed it, the first one. And this is The Island of the Missing Trees, and I think I actually like this one more than the other one. It was really, really well written again. It follows the story of a young couple who falls in love on Cyprus, and one of them, I don't remember which one, is from the Turkish side and the other from the Greek side, so it's like a forbidden love. It's in the 70s. Yeah, 70s. And then there's a second storyline like in the 2010s, where the woman's daughter is living in London and she goes back to Cyprus to learn about her family's history again. So it's again about like untangling family history and stories. And what I really, really liked about this though is that there are different perspectives again, and one of the perspectives is from the fig tree on the island that kind of witnessed everything, like the encounter of the loved ones, but also the war and like political issues of the time. It also talks about other people and relationships, and just very creative, interesting twist on telling a romance story, and the way she combines this with little glimpses and information about the history of Cyprus is also super, super interesting and knowledgeable. So can definitely recommend this as well. I'm not 100% sure if this was my next book that I read. I read two books that I don't know the name. I will have to put them here. One of them was I read one book, not two, at my yoga teacher training. I read the Yoga Sutras. I don't know exactly the name. I will put it here. Which was literally just the Yoga Sutras, so like kind of the rule book of yoga. Really interesting, really challenging read in a way, because there were a lot of words that I did not know, and there was a dictionary in the back, so I would always flip and check the dictionary. But yeah, if you're interested in yoga, or if you've done yoga teacher training, I know a lot of people watching my videos might be in that field of interest. I can definitely recommend to read that, just to get a bit more of knowledge and deeper understanding, like where the philosophy of yoga comes from. It's by Patanjali. It's on the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali. That's what it was. But I'll put a picture and the name here. And when I was in India, my roommate, shout out to Tiasha, she recommended me this book, which is Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I would say this is one of my top favorite books of the entire year. This is an amazing piece of literature. It is by the author Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who has a PhD and is a psychoanalyst, a poet, a writer. And with this book, she explores like philosophy and sociology and psychology, combining it with myths and stories, which is so cool. And it's like, she's Latin American, I don't know if I said that, but so it's like myths and stories that are typically from Latin America, and it's just such a good balance between, you know, myth stories, like a type of fiction, and science, like scientifically based study on human beings. And each chapter is a different story and a different topic. So the base of it is to like retreat to your wild woman, your pure self, and find your like feminine being, your pure self again. And yeah, talks about finding your creativity, toxic relationships, motherhood as well. Lust, I think, was one, and sexuality. But yeah, there's a lot of topics. I don't remember each and all of them, but I definitely will read this again. It was a slow and long read, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think that means that I just have to like take my time to actually understand what I was reading. And yeah, I feel like this is a book that you can read again. I'll definitely read this maybe this year again, and you can read it in different stages of your life, and I think kind of view things differently or have different chapters that will speak to you more in a different time of your life. So I can definitely recommend everyone to read this, no matter if you're a woman or a man or anything else. Yeah, very good book. What did I read next? I don't know. Then I think I wanted like more of a story type of book after that, which I then read A Little Life, which I will get into in a minute. But during summer, I also had to read some things for uni, which was one time Peccore Nere racconti, which is a collection of short stories from Italian authors. Ijabashego Lelavadia, Gabriela Culovilla, and Ingi Mubiai. So they are all women who speak about their experience in Italy and in their like home country basically, and about divided sense of nationalities, because they grew up with different nationalities and between different cultures and ethnicities. So a lot of the stories are about them not being accepted in Italy, even though they feel like way more Italian than, one of the women's from Africa, one from India. I don't remember exactly all of the stories, but a lot of them were about Indian backgrounds. And yeah, how they don't feel accepted in either one of the places, kind of. And they travel with their families to like their family's origins country and kind of feel like an outsider there as well. And yeah, I actually really enjoyed reading this. The stories were pretty good. Nice to read on Italian, so like it did take me a little bit to get through them, but very interesting. And I think a lot of people who grew up between different or multiple nationalities can very much relate to a lot of what they're saying. My voice is slowly running out and my brain is slowly giving up a bit as well, but I hope you can still follow. feel like I might be talking like quite fast as well. But yeah, I don't want to talk like too long on each book, and I get like really excited talking about books. Okay, let's continue. I read another one for university, which I honestly can't really say much about anymore. It was called Das zweite Leben des Adolf Eichmann from alle Magnus, which is a book written out of a perspective of a Nazi during the Second World War, and yeah, talks about concentration camps, and the protagonist is like obviously highly unlikable, horrible person. And yeah, I honestly don't remember too much of this because I read it quite fast just for uni, because we had a reading with the author, came to our university and read a bit. But exactly, that's kind of all I have to say about that. It's also based on a true story, I think. Actually, I'm sorry, I think that was incorrect. I think it says it's about Adolf Eichmann's time in Argentina, because he flees to Argentina to escape his crime, basically, and that's what that's about. Yeah, so sorry, got that kind of miscorrect. So, oh, the creaking of the chair. Next up, I read A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, which is a big book, and I have not read this big of a book in years. So I was a bit intimidated, but this was a really, really good and memorable book, I will say. Definitely a trigger warning before reading this. It is a story of misery. It deals with pedophilia, sexual assault, suicide, self-harm, illness, yeah, death and misery, and was a really, really heavy book, but really, really good. And it follows the story, if you don't know, it follows the story of four, I'll just read the thing because it's kind of hard to summarize. So it follows the story of four college classmates who live in New York, and they grow up like searching for fame and fortune in their own ways, but they're all entangled together. And yeah, their relationships are kind of tied by addiction, not tied, disturbed by addiction, success and pride, but they deepen over the decades because they are held together by one of the friends, Jude is his name, who has lived extremely severe trauma throughout his whole life and now carries damage from it. And yeah, it's more than that completely, but it centers around this group of these four guys and their individual stories. But the main protagonist is Jude, who has dealt with a lot of shit in his life. And yeah, that's basically all I can say about that. It's a really good book. Can recommend if you like books like that are very heavy and sad. If that's not something that you enjoy, or if you would be triggered by these topics, I would not read this book. So then I kind of got into a bit more like, yeah, disturbing books, I would say, or more like, yeah, a bit strange books. And I read The Vegetarian by Han Kang, which I really, really liked this book. I would say this is also not for everyone, but also a really good piece of literature. It's super weird, very sexual as well. it follows the story of a woman who has a dream and one day wakes up and decides to be a vegetarian. That's the premise of the story. And this is not accepted by her family and her surroundings. And she's depicted as weird. She keeps getting skinnier, and yeah, everyone's just kind of against her. It's divided in 3 parts. So that's kind of what the first part is about. I don't remember exactly what the parts were divided into, but then it kind of goes into the second part where there's a guy who wants to photograph her and make like videos with her, and then he paints her as this flower, and she starts blooming into this flower and wants to become one with nature and wants to become a tree and starts doing handstands like as if she's becoming a tree with her branches. And in the end she's in the hospital, and yeah, I'm not going to say much more about this book. I'd say kind of need to read it. It's hard to explain. But I really enjoyed this book. I think it was also really well written and very interesting and kind of fascinating in like a weird way. I forgot. So what else I read was this book from Caroline Wahl, 22 Bahnen. I read this also in summer. It was kind of a nice little thing in between. I kind of wanted something a bit more easy to read then. Still kind of heavy topics. It follows the story of a girl who is about to finish high school, and she's studying for her exams. She loves math, so there's a lot of like math references and a lot of numbers in the book, which I thought was really clever and really cool. But her home life is super turbulent. Her mom's an alcoholic. She has a little sister that she has to take care of, and she's working on the side. And then there's also a side story of a romantic interest. And it's about her juggling all these different things. And the only peace that she can find is when she goes to the pool and swims 22 laps at the pool. And this was also really well written, a really fast read. There's a lot of short sentences, a lot of like numbers and play on words as well. So you kind of read it really quickly. There's a lot of dialogue also. And it really, you can feel the momentum of the book, if that makes sense. This is a bestseller in Germany. I wasn't really interested in it, but the woman at the bookshop recommended this to me, so I ended up buying it, and I'm happy that I did. And I really remember reading this because I went swimming, actually, because every time I would read this I wanted to go swimming so bad, because she would like talk so amazingly about her experience in the pool. So I actually went swimming also while reading this. Now I have to pee. I will take a quick bathroom break and then I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I realized, while I was sitting on the toilet, that I messed up the order of the books, but it doesn't really matter. I also realized that I read Der Junge im gestreiften Pyjama. I'll look who it's by and what the English name is at my mom's house randomly in a couple days. It's a book that you usually read in school in Germany, in high school, or middle school even, and it follows the story of, it's during also the Second World War, in the time of the Nazis and Hitler, and it is a story about a Jewish boy who is captured in a concentration camp, and a boy that comes from a German family whose dad is like a commissar, one of the people that's in charge for the Nazis at the concentration camp. Horrible person. And his son, the little boy, becomes friends with the Jewish boy, and it's about their friendship, and it's a really sad book as well. I'm not going to spoil the end, but I can definitely recommend it. It is written very easy to read again, even though the topic's heavy, and you can read it in a few days. So I also reread that again. And then over late summer, after I had finished A Little Life, I think, I kind of wanted something a bit more light, so I ordered 2 books. One by Mary Oliver, Upstream, and then I also wanted to read another one by Hanya Yanagihara, and I got The People in the Trees. And this one arrived first, but I wanted to read this one first. I remember that I was like, oh, that's so annoying, I want to read this one first. But in the end, it doesn't matter. I read both of them. I read this one first, which this took me so long to read. And while I was reading it, I kept thinking, I don't know if I like this book. I don't know if I like this book. I don't know if I want to finish it, because I would have to put it down all the time. Like, it was just too much for me in a way. It's not I don't know. It's about a young doctor in the 50s who goes to an island to explore this lost tribe who have found the secret to an infinite life, basically. And it comes out that the reason they can live forever is because they eat the flesh of this type of turtle. And he kills one and like smuggles some of the meat back to the States to explore on it and do experiments. And it's interesting because it is fiction. This is not a real story. It is based off of a true story that I'm not quite sure which one. But this is not a real story, but it feels very real. Like, it's really doesn't feel very fictional at all, even though there's a lot of words that don't really make sense, like the peoples, the islands, oh my god, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can tell that you can't really tell that it's not a real story. And the protagonist is so highly unlikable again in this book, which is why it's kind of hard to read. There's a couple really heavy topics in here again, but they're a bit disguised. So you really, or for me at least, I had kind of a hard time understanding what exactly was going on, and I really had to think about it and like reread the parts to actually understand what was going on. But then once I was done with the book, I feel like I had a better understanding, and then I felt like I wanted to reread it, to read it again so I could actually understand it. I didn't in the end because I had enough of it, but I would say it's a good book now in the end. It was a good, thought-provoking book that I think would be good if you kind of want a book that you really need to take your time with and that gives you some space to think about and have to think about to actually find the understanding. But yeah, this was like an experience reading this book, and I kind of had a hard time with it, and still I'm not sure if I actually really like it, but I would say it's a good book, and I feel like I would read it again, later on again. Then I read Upstream by Mary Oliver, which I really enjoyed. I read this in fall while being sick, and it is a collection of essays about the beauty and mysteries, as it said, of nature and literature. So she just really, again, beautifully words the importance of our connection to nature and also to literature, and how much impact it can have on our life, how much we can learn from it, how much peace we can find. And there were some really nice quotes. I don't know if I maybe underlined anything. Okay, I saw the difference between doing nothing or doing a little, and the redemptive act of true effort. But that doesn't really sum up the book that I just found inspiring, I guess. To me, it was more like reading poetry, and it felt very inspiring and very uplifting. And I can definitely recommend this. I really like this one as well. Then I read another book by Elif Shafak, which is The 40 Rules of Love, which upon my research, was supposedly one of her best, most famous books. I liked this one, but I liked the other ones that I read more, I think. It is also about a family story, but it's especially about the poet Rumi, which was really interesting, and Shams of Tabriz. And it is about a woman who is studying their poetry and their stories, and it's about, love. So the 40 rules of love, basically. So she's kind of learning about love and life and a lot about herself, and goes kind of against her husband and her family to discover what she wants and to kind of break out of her life in a sense, and to also meet she meets up with the author of the book that she's analyzing, because that's her job, is to like read books and review them. Exactly. So I would say the book explores a topic of love, and here it says faith, which I would agree with, and also Sufism, which is really interesting. I did not know much about that, so that was also really interesting to learn about, and once again had some really beautiful verses in it. And I just love Elif Shafak. She's an amazing author who combines history so well with like a good storyline that's interesting, keeps you wanting to read it, and is just really nicely written. So I can also recommend this book. Also by Elif Shafak, I then bought this little one, which is How to Stay Sane in an Age of Division, which is a really small book that was more political, I would say, about society, and especially it had a chapter about the time in COVID and how we're all more divided and isolated now, and that often people are very stuck in their own ways and own opinions, forming more division, and she draws attention to the importance of trying to come together and work together and listening to one another again. But I remember there being a passage that I really, really liked in here. I didn't mark it. I need to start marking my books, because there's always stuff where I'm like, wow, that's so good, and I just read on. But I remember there was a passage where she was talking about how she learned to write, and that way of words gave her power. So she talks about the importance of words and of speech and of being able to express yourself, and the freedom that comes with that, the freedom and the connection that you can create with that. And I really, really liked it. I think she said, I don't know if this was this book, it said, I died the day I lost my voice, or something like that. Or something in me died the day I lost my voice. I think that was this book, and I remember I really liked that quote. I wrote it down and wanted to write a song about it, but I haven't yet. Oh my god, no. I almost tipped over the plant. Okay, this video's a long one, but it's okay. I read a lot of books. We're almost done as well. Last 3 coming up now. So I then decided to buy the second part to 22 Bahnen, which is Windstärke 17 from Caroline Wahl. Where is the cover? Okay. Windstärke 17 by Caroline Wahl, which is the second part to 22 Bahnen. That is about the little sister. So in the first book it was about Tilda, the girl that I was talking about, and now it's about her little sister Ida, who is also now, I think, 20 or around 20 years old, and the mom has now died because of her alcoholism, and Ida doesn't know what to do with herself, is really lost, and decides to retreat to an island in the north of Germany and finds shelter with this family that she meets there working in a bar and doesn't really know what to do with herself. It also has a romantic interest involved, and yeah, in the end she has to decide kind of if she wants to stay there or go with her sister again. And I also really liked this one. It was also really well written, and yeah, a nice book to kind of lose yourself into a completely different world. Actually, not a completely different world, it's pretty close to reality, to be honest. But you know what I mean, I hope. Then one of the last ones I read was from a Palestinian author. I really wanted to read some Palestinian literature. I also got, let me get that really quick, I got another book. I got the 100 Years War on Palestine, which I started to read but haven't read yet. I still want to read that. It's about Palestine's history and the war that's been going on there for decades now, because I want to just learn a bit more about what exactly is going on. And then I thought maybe a way for me to start off with that would be to buy some books from Palestinian authors telling stories based off of their experiences or others' experiences. And I had a long list, but I decided on this one, which is Mornings in Jenni by Susan Abulhava. A really, really good book as well. Her style of writing is amazing. She's really good with her words, very poetic, and this was also a easy read in a sense of the writing, but a difficult read topic-wise. I also had to put it down a few times, and it took me some time to get through. It follows the story of a girl who grew up in Palestine. It is the story from before she was born, her family before she was born, her mom who loses a child, and she has another older brother, and then she's born and she grows up with her best friend. That follows their really close friendship, which is strengthened by all the trauma and horrible things that they have to go through. And then it follows her adult life and her siblings as well. Her dad disappears, her mom ends up dying, and each family member follows a different path. I think one of the brothers dies as well. The other becomes a terrorist, and she then flees to America and tries to build a life there with her daughter, but they end up then going back to Palestine. And she also meets up again with one of her brothers that had disappeared, or I don't know, I think I may be getting the storylines a bit tangled up. But it's a really sad story, but I think very realistic, and it's fiction, but it is based off of true stories from different people, and was a really good book, and I really liked the writing style. I think I will read some more books by Susan Abulhava, for sure, yeah. And then, finally, I read Just Kids by Patti Smith, which I wanted to read for a really long time. I ordered it once already, but I accidentally ordered it in French. And I started reading it like I understood it, but I wanted to read it in the original version because it's English, so there's no reason I need to be reading an English book translated into French. And I really, really liked this. I just finished reading this last week, and for me this book was an experience. I was so deep into it. It's about Patti Smith, who was a rock singer in the 70s, I think. And it's mostly about her friendship to another artist. Yeah, Robert Mapplethorpe. It's about their friendship and lovership as well. They accompany each other through life, trying to build their lives as artists, which is really difficult, and it goes through all the hardships and like challenges that they face, but also all the really nice moments and successes that they have. And it's a really good book. I don't really know what more to say about it. It also has some photos in between. Let's see, where's a photo? Yeah. So it has photos of their photography and artwork, and if you are interested in art or music or an artist yourself, I can definitely recommend reading this. It was really good and kind of inspiring in a way. Yeah, exactly. So that is what I finished off my year with, Just Kids by Patti Smith. And now I got a book for... And I got a book for Christmas that I'm reading now by Isabella Land, which is El viento conoce mi nombre. I'm going to try to read it in Spanish. I took on a challenge. I'm going to try to read this in Spanish because it's originally in Spanish, and it's been okay so far. I've read the first 50 pages. It's taking me a while because I do have to look up a lot of words to actually understand what's going on. But yeah, I can't really say much about it because I haven't read a lot. Yeah, but those were all of the books that I read this year. I don't know how many it was, let me count. That was 19 books that I read this year. That is a lot. Wow. Didn't feel that much, and I enjoyed reading every single one. It was nice, really. I felt like a child. So yeah, once again, let me know if you read any of these books, what you thought of them, or if you have any other recommendations. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a really, really long, chatty one. But yeah, thank you so much for watching and being here. And I will see you in my next video. I hope you have a great New Year's Eve. And yeah, thank you again a lot. Bye-bye.